What's up, you guys?
What's up, everyone?
It's Lemac.
It's Carlos.
And we've got a banger episode for you guys today. Did a lot of prep work, did a lot of research. I know we talked about recently in the last couple weeks that we were going to do a breakdown of Yuri Bezmenov's interview from 1984, where he was talking about how the KGB was infiltrating the U.S. in a lot of different ways to undermine American values and eventually change the culture to make room for a new government, a new form of government that was primarily socialist communist, because, well, socialist communist in that you need to have a socialist government come in and then eventually it becomes a communist government. I need to go grab my notes. They're on the counter over there. Entertain the people. Actually, yeah, entertain the people.
Okay. Entertainment. No, it's fine. No. Well, a little bit about this past weekend. I went to take a little trip to Long Beach. It was kind of cool, but it just kind of shows me how much I hate LA. Really nasty, very old. I don't like it at all. It's so crowded, and I'm not hating. Well, yeah, it sounds like I'm hating, but it's just like I would never move there. But then again, a lot of people that I know live there, so who knows? Maybe not. And it's a good place to network in, that's for sure. But I don't see myself moving anytime soon. But I don't know. There's some nice little areas. I mean, the culture is nice. You know, there's a little bit more Hispanics, that's for sure. There's, diversity and everything. But overall, I think San Diego would be my number one spot, just because that's originally where I was born, and all my family's down there. But yeah, it's a lot nicer and cleaner, that's for sure. That's what I did this weekend.
Right on.
And I spent so much money, and I feel so bad. Jesus Christ, I never wanted that again. Next time I'm going to budget a little bit smarter. I was like, I wouldn't mind spending a couple $100, but $100 turned into $600.
Yeah, I've been there. I've definitely been there. All right.
Those Lime scooters get you, man.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. It's real easy to go a little too far.
Very easy.
Take too many trips.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, very easy. All right, so I think we're ready. So what we have, we're going to listen to an audio that I recorded watching this interview. It's probably the most important part of this interview. This is Yuri Bezmenov. He was former KGB, and he was tasked, like I said earlier, with subverting American values and really just values of all kinds of countries to roll out communism. But yeah, without further ado, let's get started. We can actually skip.
By the CIA. That's basically that's all for my slides.
We can turn off the projector, and that's very interesting. Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets used the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate, overt, and open. You can see it with your own eyes. All you have to do, all American mass media has to do, is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it. There is no mystery. There is nothing to do with espionage. I know that espionage, intelligence gathering, looks more romantic. It sells more deodorants through the advertising, probably. That's why your Hollywood producers are so crazy about James Bond type of thrillers. But in reality, the main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. According to my opinion and opinion of many defectors of my caliber, only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such.
So one thing that I want to hit on that point, the selling advertising and using, the James Bond example, that's very true. Like, most of mainstream media is kind of there to just distract us from what's really going on, like the Kardashians, all the different low vibrational, low intelligence type of entertainment that we have. Even sports to some degree is very much distractionary. Back in Roman times, it was, they had the Colosseums, and they understood that the people will be pacified if they have entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you entertain the people and keep their minds occupied, they won't notice what the government is doing behind the scenes. And so that's kind of what he's getting at with unplug the bananas from your ears and open your eyes, and you will see what is going on behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
And there's just so much going on behind the scenes that most people don't pay attention to, whether it's the Epstein stuff where all of these human traffickers, these people in very, very high positions of power, like JP Morgan Chase. The CEO of JP Morgan Chase was supposedly working with Epstein on, funding all of the things that he was doing. And that came out recently, but, because something else happened in the media, whether it was aliens, more information on aliens coming out, or more, it was the submarine that everyone was fascinated by for a while that those people ended up dying, unfortunately. But all of these different sensational stories coming out, even though all of the important stuff like the JP Morgan Chase, the Epstein files, Biden getting indicted, which he is getting indicted right now for the crimes because he had an embezzlement scheme with his son for $5 million. All kinds of different things like that most people don't know about because the media wants you to not know about it. And it is partly to sell advertising.
The Bud Light thing going on, that shit. Yeah. Oh my God, people, the Grimace shit. I'm sorry, but
the Grimace shit.
I mean, I'm sorry. Like, that's funny, but
it is funny.
It's like, that's a saturation about social media that keeps you blind in so many ways in like forms, the millionaire thing, the submarine thing, not exposing, it's funny how there's not a lot of like recognition when it comes to like child trafficking. Like that's a big one. They just found one kid. Someone called 911 because they found a kid on laying on the field, and they took him to the hospital. And this kid has been missing for like about 10 years since he was like 14 or 15.
Really, I didn't hear about this one.
Exactly. We're all super saturated with like all this shit coming through like social media, all this fucking like bullshit that doesn't matter.
It's just garbage.
And I heard about the Biden thing because I follow this this Instagram page. It's called Typical Liberal.
Yeah, I like his channel or his page.
Yeah,
Typical Liberal, and then Watching Heads Roll is another one that's really good, talking about like they publicize a lot of the different stuff that's going on behind the scenes.
Okay. Usually those are the accounts that get flagged the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so sad.
With misinformation.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, some of it maybe, but yeah. Anyway, let's continue.
85% is a slow process, which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interest of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism.
So actually, I do want to touch on what that is, some definitions, essentially, for what communism and Marxism are. I have it, I think, on the next page here. Yeah, okay, so we all, for the most part, know what capitalism is. Everyone is his own economy and operates individually. So you have your own businesses, you operate your own funds, you secure your resources, and it's upon you, the responsibility is upon you to provide for yourself, your family, and then whoever relies on you. It depends on the enforcement of private property rights. That's back in the Declaration of Independence. We have the everyone is born with inalienable rights to, it was privacy. What was it? It was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those were the rights. And the pursuit of happiness in that is property rights, because not that, materialism or property is what makes you happy, but you can't have fulfillment as a person if there's no limit to what is yours versus what is someone else's.
Right, like your own asset.
Yeah, you have to have your own, like, I have to have my own property and be able to defend my own property, as in my house, because that's where my family is, that's where my security lies. And if you don't have a right to your own property, whether it's your own house, your apartment, whatever the case may be, your car too, because that's a huge part of freedom is the ability to go wherever you want, whenever you want. And that's a car. A car is a huge portion and a huge impact on what freedom itself is. Being able to be as mobile as you are with a car. Imagine if you didn't have a car.
Oh, you'd be useless.
And on top of that, if the government was way more authoritarian, like, you can't go anywhere because the government doesn't let you go anywhere, essentially. And if we had, public services like we seem to be kind of rolling out now, I saw one video of some girl walking into a gas station, and they had a camera at the top of the gas station. You had to stand in one spot and look up at the camera, and then the doors would open for you. Now imagine that on a level of, Uber. We only have Uber, or we have Tesla cars that are driving us around everywhere. It's all automated. And say you piss off the government in some type of way, just like us, this podcast, saying what we say, we could very easily end up not being able to go where we want to go and go to get groceries and provide for ourselves or our families, just because the government's like, no, we don't want you to do that anymore. Yep. That's what the social credit score system is.
And I feel like
they do that in China.
I feel like the society that we're building today is going to lead us to that. And that's what people want, bro.
And it's
so sad.
And that's what the demoralization that he was talking about is. It took 15 to 20 years. Now, this is back in 84, and he says, I think he gets to it eventually in his in this interview recording that I have here, but this is already done. This has been done. It's been done back in 84, and it's continued up until just recently. We're starting to have some pushback of, conservative people with American values, Donald Trump, make America great again. That whole idea, that Christian right, I guess you could say, is a manifestation of the people understanding this is what's been happening and trying to reverse this demoralization process. And it's going to take some time. I think things are going to be become a bit worse before they get better. But I do think that things are going to get better. I'm not entirely black-pilled and doom and gloom, but I do think things are going to get a little bit worse, a little bit more chaotic before they get better. But then again, back to definitions. So we covered capitalism. I will say that there are some negatives to any theory of government. One of the negatives is it leaves the door open for exploitation of workers. That's entirely possible. That's kind of what happened when we outsourced all of our labor to China. Yep. Now we have children in sweatshops making our iPhones, our Nikes, all of that. That's terrible, and it shouldn't be allowed because, children need to be children. Exactly. I do think that children should start working younger than they do in the States because work actually it teaches you responsibility. So complete anti-child labor laws, but are not great. But, having your children work in your business or having children, giving them small jobs that they can do to start to grasp what having a job is and becoming more responsible, definitely necessary. Because we have a lot of kids nowadays that are just entitled to everything because they've never had to work for anything. Yep. Another downside of capitalism is potential for monopolization. You don't want one company owning everything. And we're starting to get into that actually with BlackRock and Vanguard, those two giant corporations that have started they own like 90% of businesses, just those two companies.
Yeah, and then also, pretty sure they're going to start taking over land.
Yeah.
I've already seen that. It says new houses being built in Nevada up for rent. I was like, I want to fucking rent a house.
I want to buy a house.
Exactly.
And a lot of these companies, BlackRock and Vanguard both, are buying up single-family homes so that they can rent them out as opposed to having the regular people, us, buy the houses and either live in them or rent them out ourselves, because that's a great way to make money also is by renting property. Now, that being said, I personally wouldn't rent property out because I don't want to manage tenants. It's just sounds like terrible.
It's
pain in the butt. Yeah. And then I will say also in capitalism, there's a high potential for inequality. But I would say that that's also partly due to a lot of other factors, whether it's inequality of education. In a lot of minority communities, the education just isn't great, so they end up being less capable or less likely of starting their own businesses and being self-sufficient in the same way that a lot of people who were born into better circumstances and got better education, got the education from their parents, all of these different factors that lead into inequality. Inequality is not just capitalism. A lot of people want to say that capitalism is the main cause for inequality and socialism and communism are the way to do it. Really, socialism and communism, they do make you equal, but they make you all equal at the bottom with a few people controlling everything. And that's terrible. And those few people controlling everything have all of the power. We've seen it with Stalin, with Hitler, because that was fascism, but had some socialist stuff. Venezuela, Castro, all of these different examples. There are so many countries that have tried full-on communism. North Korea, that's a really great example of real communism that is destroying people's lives.
Yeah, people have no freedom out there for sure.
No, none whatsoever. If you want a good example of what communism really looks like, listen to Yeonmi Park's interviews on Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson's podcasts. Those are great for if you want to understand what it's like being just a regular person trying to live and survive in a communist dictatorship.
But that's what y'all want, though.
Yeah, I guess. Some people, a lot of people, unfortunately.
So there's people trying to run away and go to South Korea. They run away to South Korea.
Yeah. Yeonmi Park ran away to South Korea and then came to the States.
Mm-hmm.
And then so now we've kind of covered what capitalism is. Communism, it's a classless system in which the means of production are owned communally and private property is non-existent or severely diminished. That's essentially what communism is. It's mostly owned by the government. They say communally, but really it's owned by the government because, you pay your taxes from working and then the government dictates who gets what and how much of everything. But as we know, just go to the DMV. Government sucks at running stuff.
And some people want that. I remember my roommate. I used to have a roommate, and then they'd be like, yeah, I think it should be like that. I'm like, what? No, hell no. So you think I'm going to work my ass off for like 12 hours, and then let's say you don't feel like working or you don't feel like you're qualified enough to get a higher job because you just don't want to push yourself to become a lot more educated. So you're comfortable getting this little part-time job, and you want me to pay you whatever I put myself through school, worked hard at work, but be like, okay, let's take away 25% just to give him 50%, and that way you both have 50%. Fuck no.
Yeah.
No, it's such a bad idea. I'm sorry, I worked my ass off for certain things. There's no way you're gonna give like minimum effort just so you can make just as much as I did. No, thank you.
Yeah. There needs to be if you're putting in so much effort, you need to be rewarded for the effort you put in. That's what a meritocracy is: effort and ability. Now, a lot of people might put in effort doing a lot of dumb stuff. You could put in a lot of effort to smoke weed all day. There's a lot of different ways to put in effort negatively. And if you're just doing the bare minimum to meet the requirements to get the 50% that the other guy is also getting, but the other guy is also putting in 10 times as much effort as you, it's only right that he should be rewarded 10 times as much as you.
Exactly. And I really do hate when people say it's like, oh, let's say you hit a certain standard where you have a lot of money, you're pretty wealthy, and you're comfortable, and people hate on you for that.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you hating on that person?
It's jealousy, envy.
You don't know what they've been through. You don't know what steps they've gone through. You don't know what fucking pile of shit they had to shovel.
Yeah.
Don't be hating on people that have more money than you. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry you didn't try hard enough.
Yeah. And then something to note is that no communist government in history has completely successfully eliminated personal property, money, or class systems, because that's the end goal of communism, is to eliminate the need for money because everything is given to you by the government, because everything is owned collectively by the government. Mm-hmm. And then so socialism and communism are very much the same thing. Collective ownership of means of production, meaning that all of the businesses and the means of producing goods is owned by the government through taxes and whatnot. So technically it's communally, but it's whoever's in charge is deciding where those goods go. taxes pay for ownership. Government determines output and pricing levels, which doesn't work because a lot of the people in government, like we were saying before, they're relatively incompetent. Mm-hmm. That's why the DMV is so terrible to go to. It shouldn't be that difficult to go to the DMV, check your paperwork. Most of it should be able to be done online. A lot of it is, but it's just one of the best examples of horribly run industries or services that the government is in charge of.
Post office just as bad.
Post office, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So the government supplies everything to citizens like food and healthcare, production for use, not for profit. So they don't produce excess at all because there's no profit. There's no money in to be made to produce all of these different excess goods. So it's produced only for use, not for profit. And then, production is, people get greedy. These communism and socialism are theories for how we could possibly run a country, run a society. And so far, none of them have panned out well at all. Results in a lot of equity being, like we were saying earlier, about you put in so much work, someone else puts in more work, but you both get rewarded the same way. It results in most people, those people that are high producers, they're just like, well, screw this. I'm not going to work harder. If I'm not going to be rewarded properly for my goods, then I'm not going to work any harder. And then so everyone stops working. Those high performers that are actually the ones getting everything done, they're the ones that stop working. And then so nothing gets done because now no one is doing anything. Good job.
Oops. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. We're probably still fine in frame. Yeah, so free goods and services, they're not actually free, first off. But anyways, that's the whole idea of socialism, communism, capitalism, all of those things. So yeah, let's keep going.
The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black. You still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of United States society.
And yet these people who've been programmed and, as you say, in place and who are favorable to an opening with the Soviet concept, these are the very people who would be marked for extermination in this country?
Most of them, yes. Simply because the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, obviously they will revolt. They will be very unhappy, frustrated people. And the Marxist-Leninist regime does not tolerate these people. They will join the links of dissenters, dissidents.
So what he means by the revolt of seeing what these policies actually result in. So I believe it was in Venezuela, where children were dying of hunger in the communist regime that was instilled there. And so to solve the problem of children dying of hunger, they made it illegal to report hunger as a cause of death. How similar is that to, when COVID was happening and people were dying with COVID and they considered that a COVID death? They got hit by a car, but they had COVID, so that's a COVID death.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of people that got, my grandpa got a stroke, and they claimed it a COVID death.
Because he had a stroke, but he had COVID, so technically that's a COVID death.
But he didn't have COVID.
Oh, he didn't?
Nope.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Okay, so that's even worse. But yeah, so
there's a lot of lies. There's a lot of people saying that they had COVID when they didn't die from COVID.
Yeah.
That was a big thing, but it got shut down real quick.
Yeah. And then what he was saying before about all of these politicians and people that are in positions of power being not really that great at anything prior to getting put in power. As far as, you know, their education wasn't all that great. They didn't perform all that well in school. They, you know, they haven't really accomplished anything themselves business-wise. They've kind of just failed up, whether it's, you know, they got into political activity when they were younger, and like whether it was college student government kind of things, and then moving up from there to various levels of government that eventually now they're, you know, like the Clintons, the Bidens, all of these lifelong politician types, they end up in these positions of power while not really having all that much to say for why they should be in those positions of power. If you're just like, you studied political philosophy and then got into a political job and now you're running things for the entire country, even though you have very little real life experience. That's why Donald Trump was actually a very good president, is because his entire life he's been a businessman. And then he goes in to run things like a business, which is actually how it should have been run.
America's a business.
America's a
Wolf
business.
of Wall Street said that.
Yeah, and so he goes in to try and make America great again, to make it run better than it's been running, because we've had all of these politicians with very little actual skills. Then, you know, they revolt against him because he's actually trying to get things done, but that disrupts the order that they have in place for themselves because they benefit so much. They're getting all of the spoils of our labor through taxes, through whatever the case may be. And so he goes in to try and make things right for most of the people, all of the people, I would say. And yeah, he's not perfect, but he sure did a better job than most of the politicians in the last, I don't know how long, ever since I've been alive.
Since like high school, say 2012, 13?
Yeah. I mean,
like that.
yeah, for a long time. For a long time. It's crazy.
Wait, no, I'm wrong. President Trump, right?
Yeah. He was elected 2016.
2016, that's what it was. Sorry.
You're good.
Like in present United States, there will be no place for dissent in future Marxist-Leninist America. Here you can...
Sorry, I remembered another thing that I was going to say about when they made it illegal for reporting the cause of death as hunger. Stalin did that also back in the USSR during the Cold War, when they had a communist dictatorship, when Lenin and Stalin were in power. It was illegal to, like, if you complained about circumstances, you could be reported to the officials, and then your neighbors or whoever reported you would get your stuff. So it was also an incentive to report dissenters to the government so that you could get what they had. So there's a lot of jealousy and just the worst parts of human nature, because jealousy, envy, all of these things, they are part of human nature. All of the worst parts of human nature are kind of allowed to thrive in those types of environments, because everyone's just trying to survive, but also, you know, they get greedy and they're scared, and the government is using that fear against you. Now, that being said, of course, there are aspects of capitalism that allow for the worst aspects of human nature to arise, like greed as well. But governments need to be a bit mixed in terms of how they do. So, like, you do want some socialist policies, like having a fire department that's paid for by taxes. That's a good socialist policy.
That's a great one, yeah.
Because we need a fire department everywhere. Because a house catches on fire, you don't want to have to be like, oh, we couldn't afford a fire department, or it wasn't profitable to have a fire department, so we just don't have one. You do need some socialist policy.
Oh, yeah.
That is a relatively socialist policy, but it needs to be as limited as possible. And even China has figured that out, in that the only reason they're as big as they are is because they've allowed some capitalist policy to guide their government form. So that was just a little note.
Another thing he said is about no matter how many times, or no matter how much you show this generation, or like the generation that you're building, you know, with no morals or anything, no matter how much facts you state, they won't believe you.
Yeah.
Like you said, like, even if you tell them black is black or white is white, they won't believe you, and they'll argue that they're right. And then whatever they think is right is right. That
was another thing I did want to touch on, and I completely forgot. You can see that very clearly in the LGBTQ movement when they're talking about, you know, a man and a man, or a man is not a man. It's whatever a man believes he is. If a man believes he's a woman, then he's a woman. Like, no, it's just not the case. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, really, but it's just not the case. You're delusional, and to believe otherwise is not going to set you up well for success. I'll just say that.
I just think that once they started targeting kids, that's when they kind of...
Yeah, exactly. If you can believe and do whatever you want, but stop trying to push your beliefs on everyone else.
It's just weird. And then I was watching a lot of like TikTok news and stuff like that. I know it's like not the best place to get your like sources from, but I mean, like there was a guy kind of explaining like he's like, I don't think it's right how it's illegal to be naked in public or around children, but it's totally fine when it's a LGBTQ community and parade and stuff, and they're all naked.
All the pride parades being naked in front of kids. There's an old dude in his underwear twerking in front of children. Like really, it's honestly, it's demonic. There's a lot of demonic stuff going on in the mainstream today that I'm not happy about. But let's get going. You need to be open to accepting new information that conflicts with the information that you believe. That's a main issue that is plaguing our country right now.
And get popular like Daniel Ellsberg and filthy rich like Jane Fonda for being dissident, for criticizing your Pentagon. In future, these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay them nothing for their beautiful, noble ideas of equality. This they don't understand, and it will be a greatest shock for them, of course. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years. Actually, it's overfulfilled because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. So basically America is stuck with demoralization, and unless, even if you start right now, here, this minute, you start educating new generation of Americans, it will still take you 15 to 20 years to turn the tide of ideological perception of reality back to normalcy and patriotism. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation. What matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis.
Okay, so he touched on crisis. I think that the destabilization that's already been happening.
Oh, that's for.
I think honestly
the
the
90s, bro.
Destabilization I would say goes back all the way to
The Empire
2008.
McDonald's.
Really, I mean, yes, it goes back that far, but I would say that the most obvious example of the destabilization comes in with 2008, the way the banking failures happened in 2008, and then of course we bailed out everyone. But most people don't know that the reason 2008 happened is actually a manifestation of kind of socialist policies. The reason 2008 happened is because we were trying to give people that really didn't deserve loans for houses. We were giving them loans for houses on crazy rates, like 0% return over, or 0% APR over 30 years, you get an insane, $500,000 house for, maybe 5,000 down or 10,000 down or something like this. Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
People that definitely with zero credit, like 500 credit score, you could get approved for all kinds of stuff. And it was ridiculous. People were getting approved for things that they could not afford. And if you were smart, you were able to flip houses and stuff like that. But most people are not that smart. Most of the people that, if you have a 500 credit score, for the most part, it's because you have some 500 credit score activities. Like if you have poor results, because that's what a credit score is for. It's to have an idea of what is your capability financially, what is your intelligence financially,
How responsible you are.
Exactly. And if you have a credit score that's so low, there's no reason why we should trust you with such and such amount of money, because it's just going to impair your ability to progress. But also, as me, the lender, I can't trust that you're going to pay that money back. And so that's what ended up happening. A lot of people were defaulting on their houses, and that really severely destabilized the U.S. economy. And it actually impacted our foreign relations a lot too, because a lot of countries saw that and they were like, America's messing up. We got to start working on our own thing. And that's where BRICS started. BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And they're starting their own coalition to try and subvert and replace the U.S. dollar as a global reserve currency. And Saudi Arabia, I believe, is starting to join with BRICS too.
Oh, yeah.
They're no longer just dealing with us in U.S. dollars. They're no longer just selling oil in U.S. dollars. Oil has been sold in Chinese yuan, in, I think, Russian rubles, I think is what the currency in Russia is. But essentially, it was law from 1971 when we got off of the gold standard. It was law that we would trade oil, and Saudi Arabia would only trade oil in U.S. dollars. And that would be a guarantee that we would defend them in any wars or any issues that they had. We had to deal with them. Sell oil in U.S. dollars, and we will defend you from everything, because we were the supreme rulers militarily. And so now Saudi Arabia has kind of said, screw you guys, we're going to deal with China and all of them, because first off, our values don't align, because they're more Muslim traditional values. And, all of the LGBTQ stuff that's been going on here is very detrimental to our relations with those countries. Yeah. And then, so crisis, I will say just real quick, I think that the crisis stage hasn't quite happened yet. I think that COVID was a furtherance of the destabilization tactics, but also a testing ground for the next crisis that they want to roll out. I think because it's very clear at this point to most, if not all of us, that COVID was, there was a disease and we didn't really know what was going on, but the political things that were going on behind the scenes, the financial things that were going on behind the scenes, whether it was Pfizer getting, and all of the other companies that made the vaccine getting all of these exemptions from any penalties of bad reactions, of negative side effects. They can't be sued for anything that goes wrong. The American people had to pay for the vaccine, but they still got all of the financial gain from the vaccine. So they were making like $1,000 a second, thousands of dollars a second,
Thousands,
like insane amounts of money. There were like 40 billion. Russell Brand actually was on, I think, Jimmy Kimmel, talking about all of the different. There's a clip. It's like a 60-second clip. Definitely should watch it. Talking about all of the billionaires that made money and all of the ways that the American people had to pay for the COVID vaccines without getting any of the benefits, and also these companies having no responsibility for the negative side effects of what happened. And then same with Fauci and all of the different
I love how
politicians that were.
I just love how easily everyone got influenced and fed into the vaccine. Like, I found it so funny how there's people like one moment they'll be like, oh, forget the vaccine, I'm not getting that, blah, blah, blah. And then they got like pushed super easily. It's like, oh, you can't go out. Oh, you can't buy this. You can't get into this place if you don't have your little voucher thing.
Yeah.
And like that, you'll see them posting, get the vaccine, or like complaining to people that don't get it, saying like, you better get your fucking vaccine or have that little like sticker, I'm vaxxed or something. I was like, fuck that, dude.
The sheeple will be sheeple.
I was like, fuck no. And then now there's reports of people saying how there weren't enough studies to see what, side effects it has in the long run.
Yeah.
And then
we knew that from the get-go.
How is it funny it's funny how they came out with that vaccine so fast. I know it was a pandemic and everything. But it's like, how is it that they come out with something that fast, but they can't come out with some other cure, like for cancer or something that fast?
Yeah. Because there's no vested interest in curing cancer. There's more money in treating cancer than there is in curing it. But yeah, let's continue.
It take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized. This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. He will go to Moscow to kiss the bottoms of new generation of Soviet assassins, never mind. He will create false illusions that the situation is under control. Situation is not under control. Situation is disgustingly out of control. Most of the American politicians, media, and educational system trains another generation of people who think they are living at a peacetime. False. The United States is in the state of war, undeclared total war against the basic principles and the foundations of this system. And the initiator of this war is not Comrade Andropov, of course. It's the system. However ridiculous it may sound, the world communist system or the world communist conspiracy, whether I scare some people or not, I don't give a hoot. If you are not scared by now, nothing can scare you. But you don't have to be paranoid about it. What actually happens now, that unlike myself, you have literally several years to live on unless the United States wake up. The time bomb is ticking. With every second, the disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect to, unless you want to live in Antarctica with penguins. This is it. This is the last country of freedom and possibility.
Okay, so what do we do? What is your recommendation to the American people?
Well, the immediate thing that comes to my mind is, of course, there must be a very strong national effort to educate people in the spirit of real patriotism, number one. Number two, to explain them the real danger of socialist, communist, whatever, welfare state, big brother government. If people will fail to grasp the impending danger of that development, nothing ever can help the United States. You may kiss goodbye to your freedom, including freedoms to homosexuals, to prison inmate. All this freedom will vanish, evaporate in 5 seconds, including your precious lives. The second thing, the moment at least part of the United States population is convinced that the danger is real, they have to force their government. And I'm not talking about sending letters, signing petitions, and all this beautiful, noble activity. I'm talking about forcing the United States government to stop aiding communism. Because there is no other problem more burning and urgent than to stop the Soviet military-industrial complex from destroying whatever is left of the free world. And it is very easy to do. No credits, no technology, no money, no political or diplomatic recognition, and of course no such idiocy as grain deals to USSR. The Soviet people, 270 millions of Soviets, will be eternally thankful to you if you stop aiding a bunch of murderers who sit now in Kremlin and whom President Reagan respectfully calls government. They do not govern anything, least of all such complexity as the Soviet economy. So basic, two very simple, maybe too simplistic answers or solutions, but nevertheless, they are the only solutions. Educate yourself, understand what's going on around you. You are not living at the time of peace. You are in a state of war, and you have precious little time to save yourself. You don't have much time, especially if you are talking about young generation. There's not much time left for convulsions to the beautiful disco music. Very soon it will go, just overnight. If we are talking about capitalists or wealthy businessmen, I think they are selling the rope on which they will hang very soon. If they don't stop, if they cannot curb their unsettled desire for profit, and if they keep on trading with the monster of the Soviet communism, they are going to hang very soon. And then they will pray to be killed, but unfortunately they will be sent to Alaska probably to manage industry of slaves. It's simplistic. I know it sounds unpleasant. I know Americans don't like to listen to things which are unpleasant. But I have defected not to tell you the stories about such idiocy as microfilm, James Bond type espionage. This is garbage. You don't need any espionage anymore. I have come to talk about survival. It's a question of survival of this system. You may ask me, what is it in for me? Survival, obviously. Because unlike, as I said, I am now in your boat. If we sing together, we will sing beautifully together. There is no other place on this planet to defect to.
Okay, so that's the end of that audio clip. The entire interview was about an hour and 23 minutes or something like that. That was only 14 minutes of the whole thing, and that was the very end. But yeah, so we need to educate ourselves, educate each other, and make sure that people are the people we love and care about and that are willing to listen, because you also can't cast pearls before swine, meaning if you're trying your best to be communicating properly and listening as well, because part of communication is listening, just try and genuinely communicate the truth to people. And if they don't want to hear it, then they don't want to hear it. It doesn't matter who it is. You can't keep trying to, just blowing smoke up their butts, because like they're just not going to listen. It's just not worth your time. It's better spent trying to educate people who will listen. I got two quick points, I guess, one long point, I guess. So going through all of this, the realization that I kind of came to is that capitalism seems to be the best structure for a society thus far. Socialism and communism seem to be potential solutions to the manifestations of the negative sides of human nature that sprout up in free democratic capitalist societies when they divorce themselves from traditional moral structures like Christianity. This is kind of what was suggested in part by Friedrich Nietzsche. We've talked about this before, and we've said the quote before when Friedrich Nietzsche said that God is dead. And I'll read that full quote for you guys real quick. So Friedrich Nietzsche, I don't remember exactly when he said this. This was before World War II, I believe that he said it, maybe even before World War I. But he said, God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement? What sacred games shall we have to invent? Is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods simply to appear worthy of it? That's what Nietzsche said, and he was talking about just the way that we have killed off our morals and how that is something that we are not capable of fixing. Like, it's such a great as in terms of large, it's such a large thing for us to have done by killing off morals and just making it so that we have to create our own morals. That's what he means by must we become gods ourselves to be worthy of it, and we are not gods. Our hubris is greater than we are capable of dealing with. And so we have to keep it in check by keeping ourselves in check to a higher morality than just what we think is right, because we are wrong most of the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Anything to say? Anything to add to that?
No, you kind of hit all the points. That was
Okay.
good. I like
Cool.
that. I actually like that quote.
I do too. It's a very good quote. Most people, when they say God is dead, they're saying it in, it's a lot of atheists that don't actually know what the full quote is. They're saying like, "Oh, God is dead, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, how great. Good on us." But no, that's not what Nietzsche was trying to say. He's saying we killed God and we're screwed. We're not prepared to deal with the consequences of that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We've been on 50 minutes. I was hoping that it would be about an hour or less, and that's what we're at.
Dope.
Cool.
Perfect.
Cool. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I did a lot of research to prepare for this. We didn't even cover all the stuff that I, wrote down. I wanted to get into ESG, CEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, all these different kind of socialist policies that are shaping the way that business is run and the way that businesses can secure loans. Because if they don't have the ESG, CEI, and DEI scores, then they don't get funding. That's why Bud Light did what they did and hired Dylan Mulvaney to represent their product. They were trying to fulfill ESG requirements and increase and keep their ESG score so that they could continue to get funding later.
Did not know that.
Yeah, that's why they did that. That's also why Target has all the gay pride stuff in the front of the store and then moved it to the back. Also, most people don't know this. The bomb threats that Target was getting when they moved their stuff to the back, it wasn't from conservatives saying you guys have all this gay pride stuff. It was actually gay pride, like LGBTQ community, threatening to bomb Target because they succumbed to what conservatives were asking of them. But anyways,
Jesus
that's for
Christ.
it's crazy. And there was an article that came out saying that Target got bomb threats, and it was like a full article, like multiple paragraphs. And by the end of the paragraph, at the end of the article is when they were like, yeah, it was actually LGBTQ community that was threatening Target, not conservatives.
Damn, y'all a terrorist.
Yeah. So if you just headline read, you're going to be misled. You got to read the whole article.
Crazy. I didn't know that. Good to know.
Yeah, crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. We got to defend ourselves, defend our families, educate each other, and do the best we can to live by Christ.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Amen. All right, guys. It was a good episode.
It was a great episode.
I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned something and can take this information to heart.
Definitely. And show it to your friends.
Yeah, please do.
That way they can learn. We can reverse time. I know it's 15 years, but I know if you press hard, you can finish it in 5.
All right. Deuces.